Hi, I'm Michael Joy. Welcome to another reaction video. I want to say up front here, if you're a subscriber or catching this video randomly, just know that this is a mold making video. We make a lot of content here and I'm a professional mold maker, and so you may or may not want to be on this bus if you're interested in some other things. But for the makers out there, get ready. Hi, this is Michael Joy. Welcome to another mold making critique video slash teaching slash observation and slash maybe I'm going to learn something today here. That would be great. This video, glove molding systems, I don't know what that is, but it looks like this is, when they make these PowerPoint presentations, it looks like it's a distributor. So let's see who made this.
Glove molding is a process where we form a thin layer of flexible material over...
So this is made by Freeman Manufacturing. They're over in the lower right. I think Freeman became very popular over decades for selling foundry mold making supplies, I believe. I've worked with Freeman a couple times, but there's some things about their materials that just didn't appeal to me. One is I thought they were very expensive. The other is they were geared toward industry exclusively. They didn't want to deal with me in a $100 purchase. And the other is I don't like the way they package their materials. Now, this video is 15 years old, so we got to cut some slack here. But in general, Supplier videos, they overbuild things. Part of it is because they have a lot of material there. And the other part is they're using it as a teaching, thinking that we're going to show you something on the table, but if it was 8 feet in diameter, this is how you would do it. I could tell right now that I would never make a mold like this at this scale. This is too much work, but we're going to go between those comments. So let's get to it.
For our model, and then back it up with a stronger rigid material.
Right off the bat, it meant you had to have a wood shop, chop saw, drill guns, and screw guns and things like this for this tiny little mold.
The layer enables easy demolding of cast parts, while the rigid material increases the mold's strength, durability, and accuracy. This process uses less material than mass casting, resulting in a lighter mold.
Okay, so he's not wrong, but if by the time you watch this video, it's not that long, I would not make what is called a brush applied mold. They call it a glove mold. The reason is it's just not worth the time. My time is worth more than the cost of the materials in this instance. I would have simply boxed it like they did, and I would have poured a bunch of silicone over the top. Now, in our shop, we have access to silicone regrind, which is shredded silicone that we can recycle, so my cost is lowered to begin with. But let's admire their process if we can.
It can be applied to vertical surfaces. In this video, we're going to demonstrate the classic application of the process, and then
so this is just a preview.
An alternative process for highly detailed parts.
Okay.
With our model attached to the mold board, we begin.
Okay, that should be a laminated board.
Begin by applying our Freeman wax release.
Okay, so you're going to hear a lot of their brands because they want you to buy some things. That's legit, it's okay. But really you can liquefy Vaseline with a heat gun and then brush it in. And then what you do is Vaseline can get clumpy. So then what you do is you take a clean brush, you cut the bristles, and it's called dry brushing. And then you brush it again and you sweep out any of the extra pooled material. And then you come back with a heat gun and you melt it into the plaster under low temperature. It sounded like a lot of work, but it's like very fast and you don't have to buy other people's materials.
And then applying our PVA mold release.
You don't need PVA, you just use Vaseline.
Please refer to our separate video on proper model preparation procedures.
Separate video. Awkward.
Next, we screw the wooden frame onto our mold board.
Okay, so they screwed the frame to the board, but now you have to flip it over to deal with it. So I would always, if I'm mounting any frame to it, I do it through the top. And I know that you'd be like, oh, I can screw it to the table. But I would have put feet under this workboard so that I can drill through. But I always want to work from the top of the mold. And I wouldn't have screwed this in, really, with so many screws.
Once everything is in place, it is time to mix our Freeman 1035T urethane rubber material.
Okay, you can see, put your scale in the bag, even the pro, even if he's clean, it's a messy scale.
This material has a 1-to-1 mix ratio by volume.
Yeah, you got to be very careful about that because the other thing is that if you're mixing 1-to-1 but you're mixing by weight, the ratio is different. You see 88 and 100B, that's WT means by weight. And I don't know why they give them these industrial names. 1035T, what the F?
An 80 to 100 mix ratio by weight. So we are scooping 200 grams of part B, zeroing out the scale.
I don't like those cans.
160
They're
grams
messy.
Of part A on top of part B. To avoid an unnecessary mess,
I usually put the thinner material in the cup first. I do it opposite of this.
we usually recommend adding the thicker material first, which in this case is part B.
The reason is your part B, your thin material is now at the top of the cup. And when you're mixing the thick material, you can slosh over the top. So it depends on the size of the mix you're doing, but I put the liquid down into it. It stirs off the sides better and versus scraping the thick material.
And then adding the thinner material on top.
It's a messy can.
Here
See?
you
He's
see
got
us
to be real
mixing the two
careful.
parts together. For proper preparation of liquid
It is what it is, but
please see our other video
these are
on this
preferences, not
topic.
advice.
Begin applying the 1035T onto our part with a small brush that has been...
So that brush could be bigger, and I feel like he didn't need to have such a thixotropic mix. If you had made a certain type of liquid silicone, and I'm sure they sell it, put it in the vacuum, excuse me, put it in a vacuum chamber or not, you could have glazed this piece and then hit it with a brush and an air gun, and you'd be fine, and you would have your what I call the gel coat or the glaze coat. I know for the fiberglass guys, gel coat is something else. I'm just mixing words here. This is tedious. Could you imagine doing that little brush on something that's 4 feet across? Forget about it. You're going to dump, pour, and air blast it.
been cut to create a pointed end. We are making this layer as thin as possible to minimize air entrapment.
You can just glaze it.
One of the advantages of using this material is that it can be applied on a vertical wall. Notice how the material...
Oh, don't use a thixotropic material for your glaze coat. Just don't.
doesn't move at all.
The only way is if you're molding a ceiling medallion above you and you don't want the silicone to fall on your face. I did a big mold like that. It was 7 foot by 7 foot, and I had shit falling in my face. Oh, it was terrible. I learned my lesson.
Here's what the completed first application looks like.
So they got it, but they didn't tell you how long that took.
After 45 minutes, we test the material to determine if it has reached the almost tack-free stage. For more information on the almost tack-free stage, please see our other
For more information on the almost tack-free stage. It's tacky.
video
What
on
are
the
you talking
epoxy
about?
laminating system. We are now ready to apply our second coat.
You know what? It just occurred to me. So Freeman is for industry, and what happens is there's a lot of industry, and their weakest link is mold making, and that they have to make molds because they have to, but they don't always have the people that know how to do it. And so the distributors that teach how to do it win in that instance. And oftentimes, the industry doesn't care what it costs in the material. They're like, just give me the frickin' mold because I can't get to my $1 million part later. But they don't have the qualified mold makers. Some places do, but a lot don't. So they rely on all these technical bulletins. They got mold makers on the phone talking to people to answer questions. It's 15 years ago, we didn't have a lot of videos.
Coat. This layer will not be as thin as the first, but we aren't yet concerned
I would have
with building up
pigmented
thickness.
between
While our
layers.
detail is mostly established,
You got a white
we are
model,
still
you
careful
got
not
white
to entrap
silicone,
air.
layer 1, and
Here you see the application of the third layer.
you can't
Now,
see it.
With each successive layer,
He's doing
we are
great,
applying
but
the
you-
material
it-
thicker because
yeah.
the surface of our tool is gradually evening out, allowing us to be less
So we would have been done with the mold by now. Yeah. He built the box. That's nice. There's a core in the middle. I would have put a little piece of wood there to occupy space. I would have mixed up silicone, put it in the vacuum chamber, dumped it, walked away. I'm done. Less than an hour.
concerned with air entrapment and more focused on speed and material thickness. Finally, our fourth and final coat is applied. This
4
last
coats
layer is our thickest, yet it is
for
the
a flat
easiest and
piece.
quickest to
This is
apply.
how you do a statue, not a
Here's
flat
our
piece.
completed application of our glove layer using Freeman 1035T.
It's exactly what the type of mold is. It's done exactly
Following
well,
day,
but
we
it's
are using our
tedious.
Freeman fillet shaper tool to
And I don't remember them putting release on the wood on the sidewalls. It's not critical, it's just they should have.
separate the glove layer from the frame. Next, we remove the screws on the bottom of the mold board.
Why
and
are
then
they
remove
doing
the
this?
frame so that we can easily cut the edges of the glove layer with a knife. This step is really
You just use scissors and you slide it. You pull a little tension of the silicone and you cut with tension. Sawing like this is not necessary. It looks like some silicone has like a grain to it and it cuts like fabric. Maybe this is one of those.
useful
But the
because it
blade looks
prevents
dull.
our next layer of rigid material from pinching the
I would
glove
not
layer
have taken it
between
out of the box.
and the mold frame. Next, we scrape and then lightly sand the mold frame to remove
Extra
any
work.
excess material.
Extra work.
Then we apply a layer of wax release to the glove layer.
You don't need any release on the silicone. Depending on, well, let me take that back. It's not a bad idea, but it's not needed. Silicone will not stick to the urethane they're going to put on top of it. You can also take pieces of saran wrap and put it over. In this instance, saran wrap on big surface saves a lot of friction, but wax,
Here,
whatever.
no buffing is required because we aren't as concerned with what the surface of the backup layer looks like. We are just concerned with getting 100% coverage of wax to allow for easy release between the glove layer and the backup layer.
See, why did they do
As
that?
we reassemble the mold frame, notice the tight fit, demonstrating the low shrinkage of this material.
Well, that's a sale pitch. I mean, of course it's going to have low shrinkage. But these are for industries that have tolerances. That's a big deal. Sculptors don't have tolerances, but industry does.
For our backing material,
Wow.
we've chosen Freeman 1030, a lightweight urethane paste material.
That's got to
It
be
has a
like
1:3 mix ratio by volume
$300.
and a 41:100 mix ratio by weight.
I don't know.
When
There's like 12 pounds in there. He only needs a pound at the most. I don't get it.
we open the B side, we notice a little separation that has occurred.
Oh,
So
he
we
was just
lightly
stirring.
stir it
That's
until it
okay.
reaches a
Whew.
uniform consistency.
That's good. He was
And
just
then we
stirring
measure
it,
300
the
grams.
uncatalyzed material. I was like, what the fudge?
After shaking the A side a little, we add 123 grams and mix the two parts together.
Okay,
Again,
now
we
we're
added the
back
B
on
side
track.
first because it is thicker. We are now
Okay.
ready to apply our backing material. Freeman 10.
So if you just blocked in a piece of silicone and poured it and let it level with gravity, you don't need reinforcement on the back. You just flop it onto a workboard and you're good to go. So now they've built a case, they've removed the case only to trim the wall, which didn't really matter, and now they're putting in this rigid mother mold, which is conceptually fine, but
30 has a consistency a lot like peanut butter, making it very easy to apply. Since it has only 9
I would have
minutes of
added
working
chopped
time,
glass.
It is recommended that you mix smaller cups of material
which is just,
and apply them one at a time.
it looks
as
like
shown in
shaved
this
pieces of
demonstration.
thread. They're about an
Notice
inch
the color
long and
change as the
it
material
creates a
begins to
fiber,
cure.
like
The
fiberglass.
thicker areas will set up quicker than the thinner areas. Here we are applying our second cup of material on top of the first. This new material will bond with the material from the first cup
I would just use
without
a
sacrificing strength.
spatula. These tongue depressors,
The corners and the vertical walls
A mold
are the most
maker
difficult areas in which to
does not
apply
love
to
them.
get a nice thick layer
They're too
of
small.
material. Here is what the finished application
It's
of
setting.
the backup layer looks like. The following day, we are removing the screws from the mold board and then placing wedges between the mold board and the mold frame.
why?
Notice how the backing layer is still attached to the frame while our glove layer remains over our model. It is a
Right.
good idea to mark one side of the glove mold
Yeah, that's an
and the matching
afterthought.
side of the frame. This allows for quick and easy alignment
In the
of
box,
two
you could have
pieces
built a
later.
notch.
Next,
Now,
peel the
I don't like it when a company peels so delicately because that material should be extremely durable. You should be able to yoink that silicone blanket right off there without having to worry. You don't want to be careless, but you shouldn't have to worry. Maybe it's just for dramatic effect. It's a good mold.
Finally, we wash off the PVA with water or a damp rag. This
So if you have trouble washing off release agent, what you do is you take a little bit of urethane resin and you pour it into the mold and you slush it around the mold and you let it set. And that resin will cure as a little eggshell, and then you break it out and it's bonded with any release agent that you have on the silicone. And it's a way to clean things out fast.
This also illustrates why we don't need any additional registration to properly align the two pieces. The irregularity of our parting line.
The problem is the way that they made their what they called the mother mold on the back. If it didn't have this wood frame, when you turn that mold over and you put it on the table, it rocks. And if you're pouring plaster into that or whatever, your mold then needs to be stabilized. So you've now committed your mold to a blanket, a mother mold, and an external wooden frame. So and you could have one piece of silicone and one and done. That's what I'm saying.
Will provide a natural locking mechanism. And the mold is now ready for pouring plaster or urethane.
But now the plaster also, when they pour it, they're going to be scraping onto their box, and this box is going to get all gooky. So it's unnecessary.
To create many accurate, easily demoldable parts.
Wow.
Following the exact steps of the glove molding process will work for many medium-sized projects. Here is an example of a glove mold using Blue Star's VRM65.
Yeah, so you're paying a guy a lot of money to make a mold to save $40 in silicone, $50 in silicone, and you got to make that value judgment because someone now had to build that wooden box, and it's just more work than I think it's necessary. It could be a one block mold and you're done.
A brushable silicone rubber and repro laminating resin mixed with fiberglass strand as the backup material. Silicone, while being more expensive, is often preferred by those who require a very easy part release because silicone doesn't require any release agents.
So in my mind, a silicone mold, that flange should go entirely over the wooden top because what happens is now material can go around that blanket and get under and bond to your mother mold, and now it creates distortions in the way that liner sits in the mother mold, which is exactly what a parts maker doesn't want, any distortion or tolerance.
However, the typical glove molding process might not work as well for very intricately detailed.
Well, they should have glazed this, and so it's funny that they're saying that it might not work. I mean, we know that.
Models, such as our previous model, which demonstrates the shortcomings of this process.
I thought they did a good job. What happens is you can be splitting hairs on a mold in the bubbles and stuff like this, but where does this thing go? It's a ceiling medallion. It goes way up in the ceiling. Who's going to care about some of the details in that regard?
Applied to such an irregular surface, air entrapment is almost unavoidable, resulting in minor defects as shown here. To demonstrate a solution to this problem, we've gone back and added an additional step, one that is only necessary for highly detailed models.
Added another step. Oh, they sell something for this step.
This time we will add 2 layers of our Freeman 1035.
What's happening?
A much thinner material primarily used for mass casting flexible parts and molds. This material mixes at a 1-to-1 ratio by weight or volume. For this example, we're mixing 75 grams of each side into a cup.
What are we doing?
And then applying a thin coat to our model. Notice how the material puddles just a little bit in the deeper areas, which
this is a silicone?
Where the air entrapment occurs. Using an air
We're doing it
to
again?
push air over a layer may also help prevent bubbles from forming underneath. The material will thicken gradually over the gel time.
I see.
After about 20 minutes is the ideal time to apply the urethane to non-critical areas and vertical walls. Here is what the
So this is not a silicone mold, it's a urethane mold.
1035 looks like. Once the almost tack-free state is reached, the second layer proceeds exactly like the first.
Man, they are taking the long way to get downtown.
Over our model, creating a smoother working surface and lessening the
it's like,
possibility
we're going to walk to
of
California. We're not going to fly.
Freeman 1035T to complete the glove layer.
Okay, so for a teachable reason, they're right. This is what they should have taught in the first place, is that if you're not making a fully poured block mold of silicone, use a thinner silicone to glaze it. However, instead of buying like 8 different silicones, I would use 1 or 2 silicones, and then I would add a thinning agent, and I would just use the same silicone and make it more watery. You can thin silicone.
From this point,
yeah, that's what I would have done.
Proceeds exactly as in our earlier demonstration, with several layers of Freeman 1035T to complete the glove layer, an overnight cure, and then the application of Freeman 1030 to produce our backing layer.
Well,
on the 3rd day, we are ready to view the results of
our
extra effort. You can see the differences in color between the 1035 and 1035T.
No, good job. I mean, it works.
In the areas where air entrapment occurred in our earlier mold.
Urethane doesn't always laminate as well as silicone,
making the added working time worthwhile.
so your layers can separate.
For complete information on the products you've seen here, plus free access to over 30 other videos featuring topics such as silicone rubber mold making, polyurethane casting, building fiberglass laminate molds, forming composite parts,
Wow.
and more, please...
Okay, the closing, which I always like. When a supplier is making a mold making video, you have to know that they're within a lab environment. They're not a field environment. So everything that they have looks easy and accessible. And, oh, I have a wooden frame. Oh, this is the material. But when you're in a shop working fast, things change. You have to be able to think problem solving on the fly. And a lot of these companies are good at telling you the properties of their materials. Like, oh, it won't stick to aluminum, but it will stick to glass and things like this. But they're not great at telling you how to design a mold. And that just comes from years of experience. They can give you some guidelines, but if you're looking to your distributor for mold making advice, then it's going to come back limited because those guys are mostly busy selling the materials and giving some workshops, but they're not in the field. It's rare that they'll have a mold maker working in-house. A couple of the places do, but they save them for their best clients, right? Somebody that's buying a drum, not somebody that's buying a $50 sample kit. It's too hard to service that type of client for this type of industry. They want to sell gallons, pails, and drums, and the big industry for mold making is the marine. They sell surfaces and fiberglass and all sorts of stuff. I was gonna go off on a tangent and I decided to stop, so just edit that out. So anyways, these companies can be helpful if you have nowhere else to go, but these days with YouTube, you have a much better bet than I did when I was talking to just whoever was selling me the material. So this guy did a great job. I just think that I would have designed the mold completely different from the beginning, and I'd have been one and done. And I would have been taking my girl out to dinner rather than working late making the molds. So there you have it. Stay tuned for more. Thank you for watching this video. We're getting ready to launch a new platform called Hand-ufacturing. It's going to feature a lot more educational films about mold making and casting, from very basic to advanced mold making. Our hope is that it helps the business entrepreneurs out there learn efficient ways to manufacture their products and bring a lot more wealth into their household. Stay tuned.